It's rainy and a little on the cool side today, and I'm having my peach mango tea that tastes pretty good, but it smells just about as good as it tastes. And I'm doing a little bit of piecing for myself, sewing on my own projects, which I don't get a lot of time to do. And today I wanted to talk about why sometimes it just doesn't measure up. But in our quilting world, when we go to piece, sometimes our blocks don't come out. One will be 6, one will be 6 1/4, one will be 6 1/2. And that's where squaring up comes in. But in the meantime, we do need to talk about piecing and our seam allowances. When we piece 2 pieces of fabric together, I believe these are 2-inch squares, a red and a tan. When we piece these together, 2 1/2 and 2 1/2 would be 5, but we have to allow for a seam allowance. And when we piece that 1/4 of an inch, you would think it would be 4 and 4.75 inches, but not so, because when you make your 1/4 inch seam allowance, it's a 1/4 inch on each piece. So when you sew this and you go to open it up, let's pretend it was sewn because my sewing machine is over there, my Bernina. You would have a 1/4 of an inch seam in here, and it would be a 1/4 of an inch each piece. So really this is only going to measure then 4 1/2 inches. The more you piece a block together, the more pieces, and I've talked about this before, the more pieces you have in a block, like this 9 patch right here, you're going to lose a 1/4 of an inch plus a 1/4 of an inch, so you can lose a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch here. So what would have been a 2 1/2, 2 1/2, 2 1/2, 7 1/2 inch across, now only measures, technically, before this was placed in the quilt and finished, it measured 6 1/2. You have to allow a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch here so that all your blocks come out to be square. If they're not square, then just find your smallest block, and let's say it comes out to be 5 inches square. You're going to make all your blocks 5 inches square. Even the well, not this negative space, because this is part what we would call the sashing. This is a piece of Civil War that I put together, and it's one of those unfinished projects that I need to get going on. But yes, the more pieces you have across the block, the more pieces you have across not only a block, but another block, and the top of your whole quilt. This one's probably, I don't know, maybe about 50 or 60. I don't know, it's just the start. More important it is to be spot on with your piecing. This quilt back here that I have was 2,106 pieces, 2 1/2 inch squares. And you can see that if I was off up there and carried that offness all the way down, I would really be off. I would be off 2 and 3 squares sometimes. So you've got to make sure your 1/4 inch, or yes, your 1/4 inch seam is spot on. The other thing that's unique about this quilt, obviously it's red and white. I love red. I love the color red. I'm not a big border person, so I like smaller, narrower borders. I think they add more tailorness, maybe is the word I want, to a quilt, because you didn't put on a 4-inch border and then a 6-inch border and just make the middle part of your quilt small. This quilt, I put it on my label, I want to say is about 75 inches square. And it didn't take me that long to do because I chain pieced it. Even though I did not strip piece this was chain pieced, a cream and a red together lots and lots of times, over and over and over and over and over again. And then those pieces put into rows, and then those rows into workable units to where I could sew it all together. This is one of my very favorite quilts. I love this quilt. Okay, another couple things I want to talk to you about. First of all, behind me here is my pre-cut stash, I guess you could call it. I have an infinity for Civil War fabrics. I think I've made that point in another video. But these are stacks of fat quarters. These are all my layer cakes. They're probably my very favorite pre-cut layer cake. These are jelly rolls back here. They're 2-inch wide strips, all wound in together, a jelly roll. These are called honey buns, and this is, I'm going to talk about this in a minute. These are honey buns. They're 1.5-inch strips. We have 5-inch charm packs, and this happens to be Timeless by Joe Martin, one of my favorite fabric designers. And these little tiny ones are mini charms. Lots of charm packs back here, more jelly rolls, lots of jelly rolls, honey buns. But my favorites are layer cakes, and I do like working in collections. My project of the month, now that tax season is over, is I've always wanted to make a pineapple quilt. But I believe I got this off of the Missouri Star Quilt Company. Yep, one of my favorite online tutorial places and shops. And it's called the Pineapple Quilt, and it is made out of 1.5-inch strips, which is what this is. And this line, I got two. This line is by Betsy Chuchnian, and I want to say it's called Lizzie's Legacy, and I don't have my glasses on. I've recently turned 50, and the eyes just aren't what they used to be anymore. But it's Lizzie's Legacy by Betsy Chuchnian, and I want to say. Beautiful color combinations of this, but that's what I'm going to be working with. The last thing I wanted to talk about today is a treasure I've kind of had in my treasure trove for a while. This book was originally published in 1838, and it's called The Workwoman's Guide. And in here, I'll just read to you out of the front of this. It says, containing instructions to the inexperienced, me, in cutting out and completing those articles of wearing apparel, etc., which are usually made at home. Also explanations on upholstery, straw plaiting, bonnet making, knitting, etc. I love needle arts. I love needle arts of all kinds. And I think back in the day, they were made out of necessity, where now they're more of a hobby. But this is The Workwoman's Guide, and it's just, quote, by a lady. And I loved that. But I don't know if you can see some of the illustrations on the front, but the measurements in here talk about nails, like 2.5-inch nails versus, like in our modern day, 2.5 inches, maybe 2.5 nails. Yeah, everything was measured by nails. I don't quite know what that was. Let's see if I can show you this. On linen, and it just says something, 2.5-inch nails, 1.5-inch nails, 6 nails. I just think this book is charming. I love it. I don't know, you could probably get this. I didn't look before I made this video on Amazon to see if this book was available. Obviously, this is a reprint. It's dated 1986. But in here it says, The Workman's Guide, containing instructions to the experienced, the thing I just read you, by a lady. Method shortens labor. You see that right there? Method shortens labor. Tip. Big tip. Then it says London, Simkin, Marshall and Company, Stationers Hall Court, 1838. A really good find. I don't even know where I got this. Maybe a yard sale. I've had it for 6 or 8 years, maybe. Just a really, really, really good book. Enjoy your day. Be creative.